This is the Danny Bouchard D12, an AKG C12 clone that I first learned about over at GroupDIY.com. Now here, let me show you the front. Let me show you how I styled it. It's the PBR C12. So, overall, this is a pretty neat project, and you end up with an awesome microphone. And you can do so for about $500 in parts. So that being said, let me show you how to build it.
You're listening to The Dangerous Mind of Mark Yoshimoto Nemkov. No excuses, no BS, no pants.